Here's why you're wrong, and I know for a fact you're wrong. In a free market, that is correct. What you stated is correct. China is not a free market. I have friends that have manufacturing plants in China. When Trump put the tariffs on China, you know what the Chinese Communist Party did? They went to those companies and said, please do not move your factories. We will pay it. We will keep your prices down so that you do not pay those tariffs. We will pay to make your prices lower here so that the price stays the same to the end consumer in the United States. That's what happened. It's not a free market. In a free market, what you said is true. In the CCP world, they can do whatever they want as a government. And if they want to pay those taxes to keep themselves competitive globally on a trade basis, they will do it. And that's what they did.
Yeah, but the importing company still ends up paying the tariff. Let's then talk to Hal Lambert, who is a Megadonor to the Republican Party and is from Point Bridge Capital. Hello to you, Hal.
Hello, nice to be here.
Good to have you here in the Donald Trump in the red corner. And Antjuan Seawright is a Democratic political strategist and from Blueprint Strategy LLC. Antjuan, good afternoon to you.
Always good to be with you.
Great pleasure to have you here. So Hal and Antjuan, let me ask you both of you first. Do you consider this event in a few hours' time a defining moment? Is it a make or break for either of your candidates? Hal, what do you think?
Well, I think it's very important for Kamala Harris. I think Trump's done, this will be his 7th presidential debate. It'll be her first. So the pressure is really on her. I think if she stumbles at all, it's probably the end for her. I think the pressure is not as high for Trump, although, I think he will do well in general. The big question is going to be how does she do and how does she defend her record? So that's really going to be the issue. I think what's going to happen is Kamala is going to try to make this debate about, personal issues with Trump, and Trump's going to make the debate about her policy issues. So I think that's what you'll see in general when it comes to the debate tonight.
All right. When I come back on one or two of those points, as you'd expect, Antjuan, in Kamala Harris's corner, do you think it's a make or break, as Hal Lambert suggests, for Kamala Harris?
I think every situation or every scenario in which she takes the podium or addresses the world, quite frankly, is an opportunity for her to continue introducing herself to the American people. Do I think a debate or a poll, for that matter, is going to determine what happens in November? Absolutely not. And no disrespect, Hal, but I think the opposite. Donald Trump, known commodity when it comes to trying to draw a personality contrast. Kamala Harris, the policymaker, is going to lean in tonight around policy because she does have a record she can be proud of. She has a bipartisan track record in which she co-led many efforts that have garnered the support of Washington, D.C. Republicans, even when they voted against legislation she's helped lead on as a part of the Biden-Harris administration. They went back home and tried to take credit for the benefits. And so I look forward to the contrast conversation. They both had 4 years to govern in different capacities in the White House. And so that's going to be what's pivotal and important. And what I think she cannot do is allow the former president to lie without holding him accountable, but also get drawn into this personality conversation. And at the end of the day, I do think she will prevail because she has a known history of punching above her weight and defying political gravity.
All right, so who is the real Kamala Harris and the real Donald Trump we're going to be seeing this evening? How? I mean, you started off by saying you thought Donald Trump would be talking policy, and it would be Kamala Harris talking personality. Now, I keep on seeing and I keep on reading reports that those close to Donald Trump want him to lay off the personal attacks and the abuse, the racial references, calling her a lunatic and mocking her laugh and that sort of thing, and talk about policy. But he continues to do those personal things. Will tonight be any different, do you believe?
Yeah, no, I think his focus tonight will be policy. So I predict that he will do that. And I think there's a lot to work with there because her policies are out of the mainstream. And, the New York Times poll is a big, big red flag for the Democrat Party because in that poll, 63% of people want change. And Kamala is not change. Kamala is part of the current administration. So when you've got 63% of the voter public wanting change, that's a good sign for President Trump for this election cycle.
But it did seem how the evidence was that people wanted change, and when Joe Biden quit the stage, they clearly thought they got change, and that accounted for the spike in support for the Democrats under Kamala Harris. Hal?
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. I think they were just so disappointed in the way Joe Biden was performing but she's the candidate for that same administration, and so that it's just a continuation. In fact, even Bernie Sanders came out and said, no, she hasn't changed. Her policies will be the same. So I think that it's going to be very difficult for her to pretend that she's different and that she's going to do things differently. If she was going to do something differently, why didn't she do it in the 3.5 years that she's been in office? She's there. She could do the things that she's going to propose already and hasn't done them. So I think it's going to be difficult for her to skirt that.
Antjuan?
Well, I think fundamentally that's just not true. Name a time when Mike Pence could do all the things he wanted to do or may have wanted to do when he was vice president of the United States. Name a time in history when any vice president could do that. What she has done was co-led on efforts that you all can frame it as extreme, but there's nothing extreme about investing in America's infrastructure in a bipartisan way, fixing roads and bridges and airports, making sure the internet access is a must, not a plus. There's nothing mainstream about bipartisan Safer in Communities Act where violent crimes are down in this country. There's nothing extreme about the largest investment in the climate crisis in the history of the world. There's nothing extreme or not mainstream about lowering the prices of prescription drugs. There's nothing extreme about that. The challenge is the Republicans do not have any argument about what they have done, or quite frankly, what they will do. Drill, baby, drill, out of policy.
Let me jump in real quick. Real quick.
I'll let you finish.
Okay, Hal, what point are you making?
What is extreme is that
just bear with us, Antjuan. Let's get Hal's answer.
What is extreme is that the country is poorer than it was when they took over, and so most Americans are poor. They can't escape that. They can talk about building roads and bridges and prescription drug prices, but the average American is poorer than they were when they took office 4 years ago. The inflation has ravaged the bottom 50% of this country.
Well, let me respond to that because I think you probably do not have all the facts. First of all, we went through a global pandemic in which the United States fell softer than any other country in the world. That's number one. Number two, inflation is down 3%, the lowest point since April of 2021. You can't argue with the creation of rebuilding an American economy that even Republicans give credit to this administration for. 16 million jobs. There's nothing extreme about that.
They're the party of the $20 hamburger.
We have the lowest unemployment record on record for Americans. There's nothing extreme about that.
Okay, so Hal and Antjuan. Let me just Hal and Antjuan, if I may. Let me just ask this on the question of policy. Hal Lambert, let me ask you this about Donald Trump. On policy, Donald Trump has been saying just in the last couple of days that he's going to raised trillions of dollars by means of imposing trade tariffs on countries, especially China. That money is going to be available for childcare, says Donald Trump. If we're looking at policy and its credibility, these tariffs are not going to be available in that way. It will not amount to a tax on foreign countries. It's a charge on American importers, which is passed on to American consumers. That's just Donald Trump's arguments on that were just basically false, Hal, weren't they? As you know.
Wait a minute. So you're telling me that taxing corporations at a higher tax rate is not the same thing that you're just talking about right now?
I'm talking about tariffs, trade tariffs.
Well, but they're the same. But your argument is that taxes pass through to the consumer. Okay, that's what your argument is. And yet Kamala Harris.
Yeah, but they're not a tax. My point was, Hal, if you'll allow me, that trade tariffs are not. They're passed through by the importing company onto the consumer. They therefore do not. They're not foreign countries being taxed for the benefit of the U.S. Treasury.
Here's where you're wrong. Okay. Here's why you're wrong, and I know for a fact you're wrong. In a free market, that is correct. What you stated is correct. China is not a free market. I have friends that have manufacturing plants in China. When Trump put the tariffs on China, you know what the Chinese Communist Party did? They went to those companies and said, please do not move your factories. We will pay it. We will keep your prices down so that you do not pay those tariffs. We will pay to make your prices lower here so that the price stays the same to the end consumer in the United States. That's what happened. It's not a free market. In a free market, what you said is true. In the CCP world, they can do whatever they want as a government. And if they want to pay those taxes to keep themselves competitive globally on a trade basis, they will do it. And that's what they did.
Yeah, but the importing company still ends up paying the tariff.
But the price to the consumer at the end stays the same because the tariff is on a lower dollar amount because the Chinese stepped in and subsidized the manufacturing, which is what they've been doing, of course, the whole time, which is why they're able to compete manufacturing wise.
All right. Well, let me get. Well, you will be criticised for that. You have been by commentators, and you will thrash that one out. Before I move on back to Antjuan with a point or two, disrespect for the military. That's a charge which is being levelled at Donald Trump, as you know, describing fallen military soldiers as losers and suckers. That is a charge which has been persistent. The discussion of the Medal of Honor being in some ways subsidiary to or lesser than the Medal of Freedom, and the treatment of staff at Arlington Cemetery. Are you concerned those things may bite? How?
No, I mean, I think that was a story without much of a real purpose. I mean, you saw even, I think it was John McCain's son come out and say that he couldn't vote for Trump now because of that. And yet there's video of John McCain running for president, walking around Arlington Cemetery. Look, the families wanted him there. They also asked, by the way, for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden to be there, neither of which showed up. And they wanted photographs of President Trump. You know, I just think that's not something people are going to vote on. They're going to vote on the fact that they're paying $20 for a hamburger when they used to pay $10 for a hamburger. And that's really, at the end of the day, where this is going to come down to. And they can't hide from the inflation
I think
that's ravaged most of the country.
A little bit of a foretaste of what's coming. And to you, Antjuan, I mean, Kamala Harris, it is said that she's shifted towards the centre when it comes to tax on corporations. She's suggested a cut in what was the proposed level of corporation tax. When it comes to arms, does she want to see assault weapons confiscated or not? Questions about that. Has she shifted her position on these things? And is she then vulnerable to the accusation of lacking clear convictions and direction? Antjuan.
I think she's just to clarify her current record, and I think that's okay. I think candidates have the ability to evolve on issues. I think she's been crystal clear. This idea that somehow or another, as I mentioned earlier, that she's somehow radical on these issues, I think that's just a red meat word that Republicans want to use because it makes sense in their polling. But everything she's advocated for are certainly mainstream policies because they help every single American.
All right. Thank you so much. We've got a bit of a taste of what is to come. We are going to be watching so carefully.